Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Thrive Pet Design. My name is Hazel and today I'm going to be going over an ENDLER's and Guppy care guide. I also thought I would mention that today I'm going to be working with my zoo to provide some other insight into guppies and ENDLER's care. Please be sure to check out his channel because he produces a lot of fantastic stuff, and I really appreciate his insight and experience in fish keeping, and it was very helpful that he was willing to record a segment for this. Today I'm going to be going over an ENDLER's and Guppy care guide. These are some really unique, personable fish that I've had a ton of, and I really love these fish, and I highly recommend them to basically anyone who's looking for a kind of different and very fun species. While they're pretty common in the fish hobby, I can't recommend them enough. They're literally just like the coolest things, and this is why I'm going to be going over their care guide, because a lot of people don't do the proper care for these fish. I'm also filming this in the middle of online class, which is a very interesting combination. Very professional. If you go onto my website, you will find the care guide version of this all typed up. I'm going to be going over it in this version and adding some additional insight that isn't entirely typed up, but it's also still all on the website if you want to follow along or come back to it. So this is a bit of an overview in the beginning, and I like to go over this because it's important to give a bit of an insight into what I'm going to be going over in this care guide. Guppies and ENDLER's live bearers are such cool species, and they're also very similar, and they have quite comparable care requirements and needs. This is just from my experience owning both, and it's seeing that they can often live together, and they actually are evolved from very similar species and have very similar scientific names and needs for that reason. It's not exactly the same, but it can be similar. I really recommend these species because they're just such cool live-bearing fish that can add a ton of life into the aquarium. They're always moving, they're so pretty, and it just, high movement and personality is something that is really good for keeping new fish keepers in the hobby. And just a bit of an overview, this care guide goes over basic elements as well as more complex topics. There are some things that some people don't need to know and some things that you will need to know if you've never owned fish before. So if you are a new fish keeper, I recommend that you go over this care guide in depth, although I might not be going over it in the most depth in the video. You can always return to the website and read through it. And just a bit of a disclaimer, I will be including links to YouTube videos, projects, and sub-sites in this video, but they aren't affiliated obviously, and I'm just showing them because I think that they're cool, and you should always do your own research and buy from what you feel is most ethical and support people who are doing ethical things. Nextly, I'm going to be going over some of the fast facts about these fish. Basically, there is a ton of nuance to these, and some of the things can be morphed together, but some of them aren't. So I go over the scientific names, which is Porciello reticulata, I think is how you pronounce that for guppies, and then ENDLER's are Porcielli wingi, is how I would have pronounced that one, but I was also in reading support for not knowing how to pronounce words for like 3 years, so. Origins is most of these fish are found in streams of South America, but they are particularly found in the northeast regions. So this is something you might want to keep in mind, something you might want to mimic. I go over this in the natural habitat section next as well. So for size, they can get anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches or 1.5 to 3.5 centimeters. It really depends on if they're male or female and their age, because they will grow over time. And they're very cool in that way, and that they're all so different and sexually dimorphic, and that's really cool to be able to see that sort of biology come into play in your fish tank. They typically live about 1 to 3 years, but females can live less lifetime because they're stressed from being pregnant and giving birth every 23 days. They are typically very peaceful, although if you have a bad male to female ratio, they might be a bit more irritable and fighty, which can lead to stress and fish death, but I go over this in the care guide, and you can do more research outside of this as well. They're quite easy to take care of, and their water temperature is nice with 72 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 to 27 degrees Celsius. And this is nice just because just a small heater is what I would really do. I think 74 is great because their metabolic activity rates won't be too high, that they have a really short lifespan, but they'll be right in the middle where they have a nice medium life and they're growing naturally. And I personally do 74, and I would recommend that. 74 to 76 I think is the perfect range. pH, they aren't too pH picky, but they do well in a middle range to slightly more alkaline water, and anywhere from 6.7 to 8.5 is a good range for them. I didn't put this on here, but another note is that they like their water to be hard, and if they don't have a good amount of water hardness, then they could get any sort of ailments such as Lyber's disease. They could get a bunch of other things, and they just have a harder time giving birth, and it's more difficult on them in their lifespan if they are in really soft water. So you could get something like a wonder shell or just calcium to add to this. It's not a big deal, I just thought I would mention this. Additionally, the minimum tank size, in my opinion, is 10 gallons or 45 liters. Again, I guess it all depends on your own perspective, but I just feel like if you want to have a really, really happy group of very social guppies, I would recommend 10. I think 5 could work if you just had like only males or only non-pregnant females, but I also go into this in the care guide. So for natural habitat, this is something that's really important that I need to go over because a lot of people keep ENDLERs and guppies in these very unnaturalistic aquariums. However, you really need to understand that in the wild they have very beautiful, expansive rivers and streams with lots of not lots of livestock, but lots of plants to filter out nitrates. They do all of these beautiful, gorgeous things, and people need to understand that the rainbow gravel and the SpongeBob decorations are very unnaturalistic, and that in the wild they are very used to the coastal streams of South America with the variable water flow, and you can use any sort of filtration. You need to understand that they deserve to have a natural, beautiful habitat. Nextly, I'm going to be going over live plants, and this all relates back to the natural habitat section because there is no fish besides like literally saltwater fish that don't have live aquarium plants in their like habitat. So you really, really, really want to be making this. I think that it's really important that people understand that live plants are amazing, they are underrated, and they should really be in there. They make owning an aquarium easier, they provide natural stimulation, and they look phenomenal. I would highly recommend them, especially with guppies and live bearers, because they produce fry every 23 days, and they help to provide hiding places for your baby fish and fry, meaning they will be less stressed and more of them will make it, and also they will be less likely to be eaten by any male or female guppies or ENDLERs who see them. Here's why you should consider adding live plants into your aquarium. Live aquarium plants really help to remove ammonia and nitrates, meaning that you have a healthier aquatic ecosystem and your fish aren't going to be as stressed. And you also get less algae. Live plants will remove ammonia and nitrates, and that means you have to do water changes less often, which is phenomenal for you and the amount of work you have to do. Obviously, you still have to do some work, but it goes down a little bit, and if you have to miss a day of doing water changes, you don't have to be stressed that your fish might die or get sick in the same way you would without live plants. Nextly, as I mentioned before, plants provide natural hiding spaces for your fish, and it just makes them feel more relaxed overall, so I think that they really should be provided. They offer mental stimulation, decor, and your tank is more aesthetically pleasing for you as well. And they also help to produce oxygen to dissolve into the water column, which is something that guppies and ENDLERs really need. Again, in my personal experience and opinion, the only real drawback is you have to buy a light, and aquarium plants can be expensive, but there are really good ways to get cheap aquarium plants, talking to other hobbyists, buying them online, going to your local fish store. You can do so much, and they can be quite cheap if you shop carefully. Nextly, I want to talk about is a 5 gallons for guppies and ENDLERs an ethical setup. I think it really depends on the situation, but some people do keep ENDLERs and guppies within 5 gallons. These fish are of the size that you can keep like 2 to 3 males or 2 to 3 all females within the tank, but I wouldn't recommend more than that. Mixing the sexes can be extremely dangerous in such a small tank because they overpopulate so quickly. Like one breeding cycle would probably completely overpopulate your tank, and if you don't have a place to sell, rehome them, or move them into, they will overpopulate your tank and leave the tank with too much ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate, or possibly all three. So this is a real danger for your fish, so it's important you actually understand this and make sure that they can live happily and healthy inside your tank, and this is why I don't recommend 5 gallons.
I would definitely go lower than a 10 gallon. Some people say you can put a 5 gallon with guppies, but guppies will breed like crazy, and so you always have to have a backup plan. Like me, I ended up just getting rid of my guppies. I just sold them on Craigslist and just got rid of them because of the fact like they just breed really crazy. I would definitely go bigger, is always better, so 10 to 20 gallons is probably your best bet, maybe even bigger obviously. Some live plants is great. The babies love to hide in live plants. If you're not going to be separating the babies, some live plants would be great.
Building your tank is like one of the most important parts of and exciting parts of owning fish and buying fish. So it's basically after all of this time of just researching, you're able to sit back and just create your setup, and it's just always so beautiful and fun, and it what makes fish keeping a really magical hobby. Before you can set up the aquarium, you need to make sure you have a stand. My tank is on a stand, and be sure you understand how much water weighs, because if you put it on a really cheap, like, horrible Craigslist desk or something, no shade to people who buy on Craigslist, but like, I mean more so like if it's a very, very flimsy, like, awful desk that can barely hold up like a computer, maybe you don't put a fish tank on that. And you should purchase a good aquarium stand. There are some that are quite cheap and you can always spray paint them or make them different colors to match your setup or your room. You also need to create a drip loop when you're plugging in electronics. I'm not going to fully explain this here, but I highly recommend that you do more research on your own. After those 2 necessary steps, you can start adding in substrate, placing decor, hardscape, and then live plants if you buy them, or fake plants if you choose not to. And then you start to add in your aquarium water, make sure it's dechlorinated, you put your equipment in, your heater and your filter, and you place the aquarium lid on, especially since these guys are known to be jumpy. They are known to be quite jumpy, so you really, really want to be careful with that. Guppies and endlers are definitely, I've had them jump out of tanks before, so lids are a must, and they must be quite snug because they will find places to jump out. You want to be careful because these fish are beautiful and their lives matter an awful lot, and you want to make sure that they're as safe as possible. And if this is not your perspective when getting into fish, then maybe fish is not the best pet for you. Nextly, I want to talk about the nitrogen cycle. I'm going to make a video on this soon, but I don't have one yet, so at the moment I'm just going to be kind of showing off these links here because I think that fishless cycles are extremely important if you are a new-time fish keeper. Fish-in cycles are only if you understand what you're doing. And I think fishless cycles are really important and I cannot recommend them enough. So please continue to pursue that and do research on it on your own. I really need to spend the time making a dedicated guide to the nitrogen cycle because it is so nuanced and complex. I hope you understand, and if you need any more information, I'm good to help answer in the comments. I do have a video on performing water changes, so I will link that one up above and I hope you can check it out because it's really important to understand that fish require clean and water, and that's really important to their overall health. Please do the proper research and understand that if you can't do water changes, or if you don't have someone else to help you do them or to remind you to do them, then I would not recommend owning fish just because they deserve to have a good life and clean water. Nextly, I want to talk about feeding your fish. Feeding is so fun with endlers and live bearers. They can be fed a wide variety of commercial fish foods, flakes, pellets, anything, honestly, as long as you think it works well with your fish and do the proper research. I feed a variety because feeding a singular type is not that good for their health. This is why I recommend that you either feed frozen foods one day, to pellets, to flakes. You really gotta mix it up because if you mix it up, then it will be more like their natural habitat and they will be happier overall. So some common diseases for endlers and guppies is, to be honest, there aren't many. They're quite hardy. Please keep in mind though that guppies can be extremely unhealthy due to inbreeding, more so than the endlers live bearers. I personally would recommend endlers because they have less genetic anomalies and things where they're not as inbred, so they're a lot healthier, and oftentimes you actually get a history of how they've been bred if you buy from a really good owner. And this is why I think it's really important. I would recommend endlers on this site. But but all fish can get diseases. You have to be able to work with all fish diseases. Every fish can get every disease, almost every disease if it affects all fish species. Like, they're all susceptible to ick, internal parasites, external parasites. They are open to pop-eye, they are open to cloudy eye. Please be aware of this. Something that they are particularly susceptible to that other species don't have to deal with is live bearer disease. So please check that out. Do your research and understand how to properly look after fish who might have live bearer disease. This next segment is all about endler morphs and variations. I won't be going into it too much, but it's really, really, really cool going through some of these and getting kind of a understanding of the different types of endlers and guppies, because a lot of people maybe don't understand more about the nuances of these fish. There are different classes based on the strains. There are N classes, K classes, and P classes. I personally own, I think, N classes of flametail endlers. That's what they were sold to me. However, I didn't get a verification of this. So, it's kind of like that. You have to be careful and kind of understanding the nuances of these fish. It's quite cool. I have a similar thing here with the guppy morphs and variations. I would highly recommend that you check out this website if you are interested in learning a little bit more about what type of guppies you might want and what type of guppies exist. Nextly, I'm going to be going over tank mates. They can basically be with almost every single species. I've kept them with ember tetras, dwarf brahmies, shrimps, snails, and danios. There are some species I would avoid. I personally would not do bettas. Maybe I might not do gouramis. It really depends on the individual species and the individual fish. Just keep in mind that they are peaceful, but they could bully some other ones because they are quite rambunctious and spunky. But they are well suited for almost any community tank. Here are some videos to kind of show that off. Keep in mind that I would not recommend a single, like guppies or endlers. You don't want to get just one. They are relatively social and are much more comfortable when they have friends. Keep in mind the golden ratio of male to female fish is 1 to 3, so you want to get 1 male to 3 females.
As many of you may know, if you put a male and a female guppy together, they are definitely going to breed. I would never recommend just a male and a female, even in the tank. You should always have 1 male to every 3 females, just in my opinion, because sometimes the male, once the female is pregnant, he will keep stressing her out, which can cause the female to get sick and possibly pass away. Guppies will breed like crazy, and so you always have to have a backup plan. Like for me, I ended up just getting rid of my guppies. I just sold them on Craigslist and just got rid of them because of the fact, like, they just breed really, really crazy, but I love them because of that. It's like super cool to be able to, if you're a first aquarium hobbyist or like new to the hobby, it's super cool to be able to just breed them and then you bred fish. Like, that's amazing. I remember the first time I bred mollies. That was amazing, but like, same thing with guppies. It just, you get that feeling of satisfaction.
Nextly, I'm going to talk about bringing your fish home. When you bring your fish home, I actually have a video on this, how to add fish to an aquarium. I would highly suggest that you watch it because it's really important that people understand how to acclimate new fish, because it's not as simple as just putting the fish in the new tank, because water is so different. Every single water parameter is going to be different. Water chemistry, water makeup, it will affect the health of your fish if they are moved from really soft water to really hard water. It will affect the health of your fish if they are moved from really low pH to really high pH. So that's why you want to do the correct acclimation techniques. This other section is called breeding live bears. I breed live bears, and I don't say this as a brag because it's actually like the most easy thing. They are a very easy species to breed because they are live bears, meaning that they automatically will be producing babies every 23 days. As long as you have healthy male and female fish, you will get a new batch of 3 to 15 fry every 23 days or so. They remind me a lot of shrimp in that if your shrimp are alive, they will be breeding. And this is something to keep in mind, that it's not entirely good mark of good husbandry if you have baby fish. Being able to raise and properly look after these fish, though, I think is a good gauge of healthy husbandry. But it's really important to have a good idea on your stocking because of how often that they breed, because they will become overstocked if you don't do anything, and this will lead to stress and fish death. It's not difficult to breed them, so you really have to understand that you have to keep a close eye on their numbers. Nextly, I want to go over a bit of a live bear care schedule. I'm going to kind of glance over this one because I think it goes more in depth on the website, and I think a lot of these things, if you think about it, are quite common knowledge, but I do like to kind of add them just to kind of like, if people are like, what do I do on this day? What should I be doing? You can kind of just look at it and go, oh, I can do this. That makes a ton of sense, and this is really nice because I think I would have enjoyed this as a new fish keeper. Because fish keeping can be scary. So every day you want to feed them. You can feed twice a day or once a day, depending on what you really want. They should not eat the same food every day. If you own light plants and have a light but no timer, you will need to turn the lights on for about 8 to 10 hours a day so your plants can grow. You also want to clean your aquarium if you notice anything that's dead, or if you notice a bunch of food in the bottom. You will want to clean this out just to prevent excess ammonia. You will also want to clean the glass of algae if you want. You don't have to do this every day, but you can. I do like to leave algae in my aquariums for shrimp and snails, though, so this is just a note. And healthy aquariums will have biofilm and algae, so just keep this in mind, that it's not the biggest deal, it's mostly for aesthetics. So daily, I do this pretty much every other day, is I dose fertilizers in my tanks, really small doses of fertilizers every other day to prevent excess algae growth. You also, this is a requirement. Every day you might want to do a health check. You want to look at your fish, just make sure they're healthy and active. If you notice any of your water parameters are off, if you notice the physical conditions of your fish are off, you want to do something about it and do some research. So weekly, you want to do water changes. You can choose how often you want to do water changes, but for a beginner, I would highly recommend weekly water changes. It really reduces the likelihood that your fish will get sick from poor water conditions, and I think it's a great way to unwind and interact with your fish. Nextly, you might want to trim your plants. I enjoy trimming the plants just because they won't get out of control this way, and also because then I have new plants. It's like amazing. It's like a double deal. That's not what that. I don't know. Okay, and then the next thing I want to talk about is monthly. You should really do a deep clean. You should really be sure that you are sucking out a lot of the things. You might want to clean the outside of your tank with a towel, scrape the glass to remove algae, clean filter media. You got to do all this stuff, and you really want to make sure you have a timer to do it. So I like doing it every month.
The reason I think guppies are great beginner fish, in my opinion, is because of the fact that, like I said, they can breed, so it gives you that satisfaction. They don't need two huge tanks. Like, they're not huge fish like Oscars and stuff like that, where they don't need big tanks. And they can be together, so that's pretty cool. You can have multiple different types of them. There's many different colors of them out there, which I find really cool. You can get so many different varieties, so many different colors, like I said, stuff like that. I would recommend guppies to probably a new fish keeper or somebody who has a decent amount of space and wants to breed them. Because if you're a new fish keeper, these are great starter fish. They're easy to care for, stuff like that. The reason I don't recommend these to anybody else is because it's kind of like once you get past the new beginner fish keeper phase, guppies, in my opinion, just got a bit boring because they weren't as, like, they're kind of like, they remind me of neon tetras. They kind of just do the same thing over and over again. But they're still really cool, so, and I love the colors on them. So if you know what you're looking for a colorful, active fish that you can feed and it has a great feeding response and they breed, then definitely go with guppies. And yeah, I hope you did enjoy this little part that I put in, so yeah.
And finally, after the super long care guide, is the new fish shopping list. This is everything that I recommend that a new fish owner should get for their new guppies and endlers. Now, I just want to make a note that a lot of these things lead to like Amazon, but you can also support smaller businesses, and I would prefer if you go and purchase from a local fish store, and you might even save a lot of money. Okay, so these are all things that I highly recommend that you own if you are looking to give your fish a good life. I really love all these supplies. I've used most of them, and if I have not used them, I have heard really good things about them. I think the only one I have not used is actually this heater and this Marina Light LED aquarium kit. But I think that everything in here is really good and will help your fish have a phenomenal life with you. Thank you so much for watching this care guide. It took a really long time to make, and I really appreciate the support. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel, and also be sure to check out my zoo because I really appreciate his kindness in helping me film a segment for this video. Incredibly kind, incredibly supportive. Thank you so much to everyone who's made this care guide possible and who's given me help in approving my care guides for the future. I really hope that you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below because I would love to help you out and give your guppies and endlers the best life possible. Have a fantastic day.